Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Data Insights with Gaurav. This video is part of the series Pandas for Data Analysis. In the earlier videos, we talked about working with pandas where we created data frames. We loaded some data using some various file formats or hard-coded data. Then we moved along and we went to data cleaning where we worked with columns in the data frame where we changed the column names. We converted that to lower cases, we removed spaces and stuff like that. Then in the next video, we created new columns in the data frame. So we talked about how to add new columns in the data frames. So continuing from there, what we are today doing is we will try to see how to update existing columns in the data frames, right? So, but before understanding this, it is important to understand how to subset rows and columns of the data frame using .loc indexer, right? So in this video, we'll try to cover the prerequisite for updating existing columns in the data frame. So we'll try to understand how .loc works, right? And in the next video, we will then see how to update existing columns in the data frame, right? So if you haven't watched my earlier videos, I encourage you to go and watch those videos to have better understanding around how to work with data frames. So I'll leave the link to all the videos in the I button, right? So let's start this video. So let's try to understand how, so I'll just load the existing data, right? So let's try to have, let's try to see what the data frame has, right? So this is our current data frame. It has few set of columns here, and these are the labels, index labels, right? So uh, if I want to project only the customer ID column. So what I can simply do is I can say df, and within the square brackets, I can pass the column, right? So in this case, if I want to project the customer ID of the data frame, I can simply pass the name of the column here. So if it's a single column, I can pass the name of the column. So if I do this, what do I get? I get this C01, C002, 003, 004, and 005, right? So what is this particular thing is returning? It's returning a series. So like I mentioned earlier, Pandas has two important data structures. One is the data frame, which holds rows and columns, and another is a series. So what is series? Series basically a data structure is a one-dimensional array, right? So it returns a array. So that's basically it is returning a series. So if you want to project a single column, you have to pass that within the square brackets. Now, let's say if I want to project multiple columns, right? So how to do that? So what you can do is you can simply pass list of columns to the square brackets, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm projecting customer ID, order ID, and the product of the data frame. So if I run this, I'll get a data frame in return, right? Which will have customer ID, order ID, and product, right? So that's how you do a single column. That's how you do multiple columns. So when you do a single column, it returns a series, and when you do multiple columns, it returns a data frame, right? Now, let's talk about the prerequisite, which is the topic of this video, .loc, right? So this data frame, right? This is returning a data frame, right? So this data frame has multiple functions, one of which is a .loc property, right? So let's try to go to the documentation and see what it has, right? So .loc, it helps you access a group of rows and columns by labels or Boolean array, right? So it's basically a property that helps you access rows and columns by label or Boolean array, right? So we'll try to do each of these examples below, right? So we'll try to do it in this data set, right? So let's try to do a .loc, right? So remember, .loc has a row indexer, the first argument, and a column indexer, a second argument. Now this column indexer is optional. So if you don't give anything, it will by default project all the columns of the data frame, right? So let's say we want to select a single row, right? So let's do this, right? Let's add let's try to see the current data frame, right? So let's try to see the current data frame. So this is our existing data frame that I have, right? And let's try to do something like this, right? So this is our current data frame. This is what we have in the data frame. Now, let's say I want to access the row at label number 2, right? So how to do it? So you can pass a single row. You can select a single row by passing a label. So you can say label number 2. So row indexer will be a label, which is 2 in this case, right? And column indexer, like I said, it's optional. But by default, what I've done is I've created a list of all the columns that I want to project. So for now, I'm just projecting all the columns that are present in the data frame. So row indexer is 2 and column indexer is list of all the columns that we have, right? So when I pass this to .loc property, right, this accessor, right, what it does, it takes in a row indexer and a column indexer, and I run this, the selected row will be, so it again, it's a series, right? It is a series. And what it does, it projects the row number with index label 2, right? So it has 1003, right? 1003 order ID, right? So these are all the columns because we projected all the columns. If I don't give this, right? So if I don't give this, right? So this is optional. If I don't give this, it still gives you the same output, right? But for the sake of demonstration, because we will want to update a given column, right? Not all the columns of the data frame. So we may want to use this column indexer in the upcoming video. So I'm just passing this along so that we know that there are two parameters to this property or LOC, right? So that is why I'm passing this along. So if you don't pass it, again, it will be just project all the columns, right? Now, what if I want multiple rows, right? So how to do it? So what we can do is we can pass index labels. So in my case, I want to, let's say, project 0, 1, and 2, right? I want to project these 3 rows from the entire data frame. So instead of passing a single value, what I can do is I can pass a list of 0, 1, 2, right? And then again, column indexer is all the columns. So I'm just passing that along, right? So if I run this, I'll get 0, 1, and 2, right? So you can pass a single value or you can pass list of indexes, right? These are index labels. Now, you can also pass a slice object, right? What is a slice object? It's basically a Python object where we are basically saying that I want from 0 to 2, right? From 0 to 2. Now in Python, your slice object is exclusive. So which means it returns 0 and 1. But here in pandas, it returns 0, 1, and 2, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm just, instead of passing that list of 0, 1, 2, I'm creating a slice object of 0, 1, 2, and I'm passing that to the LOC function in this row indexer. So now it will return the same output, but I'm using a slice object here instead of a list, right? So if I run this, I'll get the same output, but here I can pass a slice object. Moving on, I can also pass a Boolean array, right? So what I'm doing is I've created a list of Booleans, which is true, false, true, false, true, which means I'm saying the first index to true, which means I want the first row, then false, which means I don't want the second row, then third, I need that row, I don't need it, I need it, right? So it will display the first row, the third row, and the fourth row, right? So which happens to be in our case 0, 1, 0, 3, and 0, 5, right? Correct. So 0, 1, 0, 3, 0, 5, right? Let's try to run this, right? So it returns 0, 1, 0, 3, and 0, 5, right? So you can also pass a Boolean hard-coded array, right? Similarly, you can also do something like this, right? So instead of passing a hard-coded array of Booleans, right, what you can do is you can write a conditional statement that generates that Boolean array, right? So in this case, what I'm doing here is I'm saying from the product, right? So this will return the products, right, of my data frame. So product, if that product lies in widget, this particular thing and this, right? So what I'm doing, I'm just doing the same data set, but instead of passing that hard-coded array, I've created this row indexer via this conditional construct. So this conditional construct will generate that Boolean array, right? The same one that we can see here, and it will then be passed along to the LOC function, right? So this, when I run this, I'll get the same output, right? But here I'm not passing a hard-coded Boolean array, but instead I'm using this expression, right, to generate that Boolean array. right? So that's how you can select rows based on a Boolean condition, and this Boolean condition or Boolean array is constructed using a condition, right? Now, what I can optionally also do is I can, instead of passing that condition, right, I can create a function of, I'm calling that function as a filter function here. And what I'm doing, I'm passing that filter function to the row indexer, right? So what I'm doing here is I am saying that filter function which accepts a row. And what does this thing do? It takes in a row, and from that it extracts the product and just checks that whether that product is in particular list, right? So it's on the similar lines here. Here I had written the condition directly. Here I'm calling that function that in turn does the same thing, right? So when I try to run this, I will get the same output, but here now row indexer is a function which does particular thing, right? So your LOC function, you can call a function, right? You can call a row indexer, which can be a condition. You can pass a Boolean array, and you can pass a slice object, a hard-coded list, and you can pass a single value, right? So remember, this LOC function is very useful when you want to update rows, right? Which is the topic for the next video. So if you understand this LOC, you will be able to update values based on a condition, right? So LOC accessor has two things. One is the row indexer, and second is the column indexer. Row indexer helps you filter the rows, and column indexer helps you project the required number of columns. In our example, we were projecting all the columns. If you want to project only some particular columns, what you can do is you can simply not pass the entire list, but let's say if I just want to project out order ID and let's say product and three, right? Let's say three columns, right? So what I can do is I can simply get rid of this, and when I run this, right, I'm getting only these columns, right? So LOC function takes in two things: LOC row indexer, which helps you project the required, which get you filters the required number of columns, right? Sorry, rows. And column indexer helps you project the required number of columns, right? So that's the use of .loc accessor. That's it for this video. If you like the content, consider subscribing to my channel for such content. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for watching. See you around. Bye bye.